Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Colliding Worldviews on ABN's Trinity channel. Today is February 6th in the year of our Lord, 2017, and we have a very, very important show to share with you today. Important show that we've been touching on this topic for a little bit here and there, and we've actually done some shows around this topic as well. But we're going to go deeper into it today with an expert guest in this particular area, because my guest for this show, called Stealth Invasion, Immigration and Resettlement Jihad, is the author of this brand new book by the same title. His name is Leo Hohmann. He is an award-winning investigative journalist who spent the first 28 years of his career at daily and weekly newspapers in the suburban Atlanta and Charlotte, North Carolina areas. He was also managing editor of the Triangle Business Journal in Raleigh, North Carolina. And in 2014, he joined WorldNet Daily and began covering immigration for the online news giant. He was one of the first national reporters to cover the refugee resettlement industry from a critical point of view. So I want to welcome Leo Hohmann to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Tony. Glad to be here with you.
It's a blessing to have you, Leo. As I had told you a little while ago, I have your book, and I want to show it again to the viewers. We want to show you a big copy of it, because you can't really read this too well. But this is Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad. Friends, you can buy this book right now on Amazon or anywhere where fine books are sold. This is a compilation of a number of Leo's articles, which you can find at WorldNet Daily. And actually, I wanted to read a few of them here for you that he had recently. But he has not only a number of his articles, but also a lot of new information here as well. But listen to these. Christian, quote-unquote, activists head to mosques to resist Trump. Terror expert, if terrorists kill us, will left still howl about rudeness? The Democrats' travel ban no one likes to talk about. Obama GAO report backs Trump on tougher airline screening. States to unleash barrage of lawsuits against Trump executive orders. 3 triggers for Islamic uprising under Trump presidency. Establishment in full meltdown over Trump refugee orders. And 1,960 refugees enter U.S. under Trump's watch. Those are just a few of the articles that Leo has written and are, again, available at WND.com. And Leo, the first question I want to ask you is, what made you want to write this book? What got you interested in the topic?
Yeah, Tony, I started, as you said, in the summer of 2014 with WND after I had been laid off from my newspaper job in the Atlanta area, 50 years old, and found myself unemployed for the first time in my life. And I was at a crossroads, and I started applying for different jobs here and there. Nobody would hire a 50-year-old in many newspapers. So I started doing some freelance work, and Joseph Farah at WorldNet Daily started picking up some of my articles. And within a couple of months, he hired me full time. He said he liked the stuff I was producing. And so I found myself thrown into this new world of online journalism and covering immigration in the summer of 2014. And if you recall what the big story was back then, we had these Central Americans massing at the U.S.-Mexican border. It seemed to be a lot of chaos. Buses were being blocked into some of the communities in Southern California that didn't want the migrants coming in, the illegal migrants from Central America. And so I was writing on that, and eventually it morphed into stories about the Catholic Church harboring and taking care of the illegals. And from there, some folks suggested I may want to look into not just illegal immigration, but legal immigration. And that was really where the eye-opening experience started for me, Tony, was not just how many illegals are coming up from Mexico and Central America, but how many people are coming here legally through various visa programs, one myriad visa program after another. and then that led me also into the refugee program. And I'd heard about the refugee program before, but like you and every other American, it seemed like it was always a fluffy feature story about folks coming here from Africa or the Middle East or Asia and starting a new life of freedom. And, it was all lollipops and balloons from there. We never heard about the dark underbelly, as I call it, of refugee resettlement. And what I found was just simply astonishing to me. And I ended up writing more than 100 articles about it. And that was the sort of the beginning of Stealth Invasion. And then, as you said, I did a lot of new research to add more to the book, and it's been on the market now for about a month. And surprising to me, people are actually buying it. So it has quite a story to tell.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's selling surprisingly well. And I guarantee you that the book sales are going to go up after this show, because we're going to be informing a lot of people about it. And this is also, friends, after the show concludes, this is going to be available on YouTube, like all of our other shows as well. So please get the link and put it on Facebook, Twitter, other social media sites, and share it with your friends or email, whatever you need to do. But Leo, we have done a number of shows talking about refugees in general, and our audience from ABN's Trinity channel, because this is broadcast throughout the world, we have a lot of Muslim viewers, and we have a lot of viewers who are not Muslim but are very familiar with Islam and jihad and Islamic theology and history. And we have a lot of viewers out there who are educated about the life of Muhammad and how he left Mecca and went to Medina as a refugee. And when he left Medina, he was a military leader, a political leader, and a religious leader. Because of what had happened in those 10 years that he was there. Now, we do want to make it clear to our audience that there are definitely people in need out there. There are legitimate immigrants who have come to America. I mean, my great-grandfather is from Italy, and he came here many years ago, and had my great-grandfather, then my grandfather. But you know what? When they got here, they got jobs. They were hard workers. They loved America, and they loved being part of America and becoming American, even though they came from other countries. So they did a term that we're going to probably be using here in this episode. They assimilated to America. They didn't just integrate, they assimilated. But before we get deeper into that, Leo, can you share with our audience the differences between refugee and immigrant and the green card? I know some people out there aren't familiar with those different terms. So can you define those terms first?
Yeah, the people who come here on visas basically are coming here for a set period of time. You can come here on a student visa. You can come here on one of many different work visas, which will give you, for instance, the H-2B visa would allow you to work here in the United States. And they can come here for 3 years on that H-1B visa and renew it for another 3 years, total of 6. We know about the student visas. There's entrepreneurial visas. People could come here to start a business. There's just then you have the fiancé visas, which Tashfeen Malik, the wife of the San Bernardino terrorist, came here on a fiancé visa. I believe she's from Pakistan. I think she came here from Saudi Arabia, if I'm not mistaken. But she skirted in right under that program. So I think it was called a K-1 visa program. But there are so many visa programs that even experts can't keep them all straight. And but they are for a certain set period of time. Essentially, okay. That's the main difference between the visa programs and the green card program. Once you get but see, the problem is a lot of times people come here under the visa program, and then that gives them a establishment of residency, and they later will apply for a green card. And in some case, it works out fine. But the green card is for lawful permanent residence, which means you don't have all the rights of a citizen, such as the right to vote, but you do have many of the others. And so you do become sort of a more protected class once you get the green card. The refugees come here on a visa initially, but within 1 year's time, they can quickly qualify for the green card. As long as they don't, break any laws or anything, they can easily get their green card after being here just 1 year. And they are eligible for full citizenship after 5 years. So it is a very coveted status to be declared to come to the United States as a declared refugee, because you not only can get that fast track to American citizenship, but you immediately qualify for a smorgasbord of federal welfare programs, from Medicaid to subsidized housing to food stamps, student aid to go to college. You name it, it's pretty much available to you if you're a refugee. And then there's also something called an asylum seeker. An asylum seeker comes here and shows up at a port of entry in the United States, whether it be at the border or at an airport, and says, "I'm being persecuted in my homeland. I would like to apply for asylum here." They were not invited here. The refugees come here at the invitation of the U.S. government and are placed immediately into this program I described to you, this fast track of citizenship. But the asylum seeker does not. He just shows up uninvited. But if his application is approved, he is treated essentially as if he were a refugee, with a lot of those same benefits offered to him or her. The Boston Marathon bombers came here as asylum seekers from Dagestan, and that didn't work out too well for us, as you know. There have been a lot of refugees who have come and flouted our laws, committed violent crimes, sexual crimes. I've reported on several sex crimes just in the last year by refugees that were completely ignored by the mainstream media. And we can talk about that a little bit later if you want. They're documented in the book, and there's been one new one since the book came out. But these are the major differences on visas and asylum seeking and refugees.
Now, you mentioned in your book, you started talking about the amount of people who've been coming into America through the border, and they aren't all Mexicans. They are Somalians and from other countries. You say people have, gotten on a boat from the Middle East area, taken it across to, or gone to Europe, or taken it from Europe over this way, gone to South America, made their way all the way up to the United States-Mexico border, and have claimed, I'm fleeing my country because of persecution or whatever else. Now, we know that Trump wants to build a wall, which it seems like, I guess, is going to be built. But even if that wall is built and that, is all of a sudden there, is that the only means that these people are coming into America? Because, what you just said is that there are a lot of different visas available and all that. Do you think anyone who wants to infiltrate these crowds of refugees, being ISIS or other jihadists, is the wall going to do anything? Or is there so many loose ends and open doors just through government programs for them to come here anyway?
Mixed bag on that, Tony. The wall will help because we have literally thousands, not tens of thousands like we see from Central America and Mexico and even South America, but thousands of folks coming from Africa and that area in making that arduous trek that you just described up, coming across the ocean, then up from South America into Central America, Mexico, and showing up at the border. And I chronicled some of that in the book. There was a busload of Somalis who came in last spring, and it was all on video. A woman caught it on video and spoke with the DHS, Homeland Security official who was driving that bus, and basically told her, seeking asylum, that's the magic word right now. You say that, and it's a catch and release program. You will be given a court hearing. You may be detained for a while, and if you're from one of these countries of special concern, you probably will be detained for a while, but eventually given a court hearing. And even if you lose and are deported, your court ruling is that you must be deported, astonishingly, our government will let you go and back out into society for a period of time between that ruling and when you're supposed to be deported. So, you know, it's a free for all at that point. The person could migrate to another country. They often go to Canada, or they could just hide out in one of these. You know, if it's a Somali, say that they could just hide out in one of these Somali enclaves in places like Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Columbus, Ohio, where they have these large enclaves, and they could harbor an illegal asylum seeker there who's supposed to actually be scheduled for deportation. So
and it seems too that if they aren't deported, they don't just say, okay, well, you're right here at the Texas border or Arizona border, so go ahead and walk wherever you want to go and do what you want to do. They're actually getting free bus trips throughout the United States as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's astonishing what they can find now. There's so many left-wing organizations out there aiding illegals and refugees who are not illegal, that everything from getting cars supplied to them, Obama phones, cash. It's really astonishing what kind of lifestyle they can lead once they get here. And if they don't find, and if it eventually runs out, they can head up to Prime Minister Trudeau's even friendlier territory up in Canada and get more of the same for another extended period of time.
So they are being provided for by U.S. taxpayers who aren't using the system and, have a job and are making money. But like you said, here, a lot of the percentages of people who are getting the food stamps and the TANF, a high percentage of them are Muslims or Arab Muslims from I think I said one thing about 90%. There was a thing about 90% of them are on it. And
right. In the first year or two, it's like 90% of refugees from the Middle East are on food stamps. Correct.
And we see all these pictures of the immigrants who are coming here. I mean, I talked about in shows past about how this all started, a few years ago with that unfortunate event of that young boy who washed up on the beach. And shortly later, Robert Spencer tore that story to pieces and was full of holes. But that was this huge event that was all over the world in the news that started this whole thing.
Yeah, I chronicle that in the book as well and expose how that. Yeah, that.
But a lot of the pictures that I have seen of immigrants coming here, it looks like 90%, 18 to 35-year-old men. I don't see a whole lot of women and children. And you go in your book into the numbers and how there definitely seems to be an uneven, unfair ratio of men, women, children, and especially unfair as far as Muslim or Christian. What kind of numbers are you finding when you did your research?
Well, are you talking about Europe or the U.S.?
U.S. Because Europe, obviously, we can see what it is like going on there. But go ahead and give the numbers for both, just to let people know. But we want to definitely let Americans know as well, that what they can learn from or what they can become themselves.
Yeah, the numbers themselves are quite staggering. Overall, we're issuing 1.3 green cards per year in this country, which is a record level under President Obama. It had been increasing, though, steadily under previous administrations as well. And about 130,000 of those green cards every year go to people from Muslim-majority countries. 130,000 per year coming here on permanent resident status green cards. Throw in the visas, student visas, work visas, and all those other visas we were talked about earlier, and that bumps the number up to 260,000 per year coming to America from Muslim-dominated countries. Many of them with active jihadist strongholds, including those 7 countries that President Trump is trying to get the temporary ban on, but has been having it shot down in the federal courts so far.
Okay.
And in Europe, we've seen an even more unruly, unorganized entry flow, if you will, of Muslim immigrants into the continent. Germany itself has invited with open arms 1.5 million the last 2 years from the Middle East and Africa. This is astonishing. We've seen, you've heard, I'm sure, about the out of control sexual assaults in Germany 1 year ago on New Year's Eve. They had to increase police protection by tenfold this year to prevent the same thing from happening at New Year's Eve celebrations around Germany. Over 1,200 German women were groped, molested, or otherwise assaulted by these Muslim migrants 1 year ago. And so they didn't want that to happen again. They tried to initially cover it up, the police and the media, but the word got out that it did indeed happen, and it was 90% of these crimes were committed not by German men, but by these newly invited migrants who had swept into the country at astonishing rates. Then you can look at Sweden. Sweden has a long-standing reputation as one of the most peaceful, loving, inviting welfare states in the world. They began inviting migrants in from Somalia and Afghanistan and Sudan and other Muslim countries like this a couple of decades ago, and it has gradually turned now from that peaceful welfare state into the rape capital of Europe. There was recently three or four Afghan refugees that brutally raped a Swedish woman on live Facebook stream there, and it's just very sad what's going on there. Churches, Europe and in America, the sad thing, Tony, is that churches are facilitating this invasion. And when I say invasion, I'm talking about immigration without assimilation. Like you said, this is not your great-grandfather's type of immigrant. My great-grandparents came here from Italy on one side and from Germany on the other, and like yours, they had to provide for their families. They had to get a sponsor if they didn't have a job already lined up that would provide for their families. They had to learn the language. They had to fully assimilate and adopt our cultural values, freedom of speech, treatment of women, freedom of religion. They had to adopt these values, but that's not what we're seeing happening from these refugees and migrants. And by the way, they're not all refugees. Like you said, that word is overused. Some of these folks are merely economic migrants looking for a better financial opportunity. The definition of a refugee, according to the 1951 Geneva Accords, is someone who is forced to flee their country because of a, quote, well-regarded fear, a fear that they will be persecuted, a well-founded fear that they will be persecuted based on their religious or political views or their ethnic identity. But these are just, many of them, I believe at least 50% of them are coming for a better economic opportunity or coming here to spread Islam through the hijra, which is an Arabic term for migration. You referred to it earlier on the life of Muhammad and how he migrated from Mecca to Medina. Well, Muslims today are taught that that's a very noble thing to do, is to make hijra, to make migration from a Muslim land to a non-Muslim land in an effort to spread Islam.
And friends, if you are not familiar with what Leo just talked about, if you haven't seen it yet, I would suggest that you look up on our YouTube channel or on my Vimeo channel, The Islamization of the United Kingdom, a show I did with Tommy Robinson, because in that show, you hear what life was like for Tommy growing up and what it is like now. And a lot of these news stories that are coming out are from the UK, from different countries in Europe. And that wasn't, throughout all of history, Islamized like it is now. But we're seeing that they have strayed from being Christianized. They moved away from Christianity to the secularization, and that left a vacuum for whichever group wanted to come in and take over, who had the strongest worldview. And since Islam is a religio-political system, religion and a political ideology combined, that is very powerful when they want to rise up and be powerful. And look at America. We still have the Constitution and Bill of Rights, but we're going to get into other topics here in the show that talk about how that is being undermined from within. Now, Leo, what are the percentages that you're seeing? Like if 100,000 refugees / immigrants, just everybody, came to America, what percentages are you seeing as far as how many of them are Christian, how many of them are Muslim? I mean, obviously there might be some other categories too, but as far as those two major ones.
It depends on the country. If you're talking about Syria, which Syria is a fairly diverse country, 10% of its population is Christian. And under the current dictator there, Mr. Assad, Christians are allowed to worship freely, as long as they didn't tamper in any sort of revolutionary activity against the Assad government. He protected them. 10%. Well, when ISIS and these other rebel groups started attacking his government and threw the country into chaos of civil war, these Christians came under brutal attack by Sunni Muslims. Assad is Shia. And so we have 10% of this country suddenly on the run, fleeing for their lives, watching, their children be just killed in front of their eyes, beheaded, burned alive, crucified, their wives being raped, desperate situations, 10% of the country. And then you look at the refugee population that we're taking in from that country, and it's 99% Sunni Muslim. Less than 1%, like a half of a percent have been Christian that we have taken in from that country under Barack Obama. We've taken in a total of about 17,000 since the Civil War started, and less than 1% have been Christian. So it sounds to me like Barack Obama had his own religious tests for refugees, which his supporters are now accusing Donald Trump of having a religious test for refugees. Right. From Iraq, not quite as extreme, but still dire. About 70 to 75% from the refugees community coming in there have been Muslim, as opposed to about 25% Christian. We have been able to get some of the Christians here, but I think it has slowed down in the latter years of Obama's presidency from Iraq. And in fact, I talk about in my book, Stealth Invasion, how the most successful immigration attorney here in the United States for rescuing Christians, Chaldean Christians from Iraq, his name is Robert DeCalita. He's in the Chicago area. The Obama administration actually arrested him, indicted and arrested him and prosecuted him, claiming that he was embellishing the applications of these Christians coming from Iraq, that they really weren't that persecuted, which, that is preposterous. The persecution started for them immediately after the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003. That's a story that most Americans were never told. George W. Bush, he led the overthrow, as you recall, of Saddam. And immediately upon the downfall of Saddam, it was open season on Christians in Iraq. And
you say, Leo, in your book that but when Saddam was in power, same thing. He gave religious freedom to the Christians and the Muslims. I actually talked with some Christians. We were talking about the Trinity and different stuff. They said they didn't believe in the Trinity, but they call themselves Christians. But we were on a plane about 6 months ago. They are from Iraq, and they said that they grew up there, and they said, hey, when Saddam was in power, it was better than it is now. And when growing up, we had friends who were Christians, we had friends who were Muslims, and everybody got along. And in your book, you said that at that time there used to be about 2 million Christians in Iraq, and now it's down to, you said, 150,000.
You're right. I mean, I think some have flowed back in now just recently because ISIS has been, defeated in a lot of these pockets that they controlled in Iraq. Yeah. But it was down to, 150,000. It may be no more than 300,000 today, down from, 2 million under Saddam. That's correct.
Okay. Well, friends, we need to take a quick break, but we want to thank Leo for being with us. He's going to be back with us in just a couple of minutes. So while we're taking a break, please look up his book, Stealth Invasion, online. You can buy it right now. He has a ton of information in here. This is a bombshell material, and we have definitely do not have enough time to go through it on this 1 hour show, and that's half over. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Please stay right where you are.
We are excited to announce that we are now streaming on Apple TV, which provides high-quality television in HD. Be sure to type into the search bar on your Apple TV ABN SAT and download the app. If you have any questions regarding installment, please call us at 248-416-1300 or visit our website at trinitychannel.com.
Trinity Channel and ABN are now available on Amazon's Fire TV Stick. This product is available at any major retail outlet and won't cost more than $40. To view us on Amazon Fire, just click the search bar and type in ABNSAT. You can view all 8 of our channels via Amazon Fire to bring us to your home. For more information, call the numbers on your screen.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to ABN's Trinity channel for another episode of Colliding Worldviews. Today, my guest is Leo Hohmann, a great journalist and now author of a brand new book called Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad. It is available now. It's been out for about 1 month, and I already know a lot of people are going to be buying it after this show. Like I said, and like Leo said in the last segment, a lot of people don't know what has happened under the Obama administration and even underneath the Bush administration. And because of that, they think everything's on the up and up. And now with Trump wanting to all of a sudden be more cautious about who's coming into our country, or not everybody, but a lot of people out there who aren't informed are all up in arms saying, oh no, this is racism and all that kind of stuff. When I guarantee a lot of those people, if they knew what Leo has written in his book here, they would be on Trump's side, realizing, yes, we actually do need to have a reformed process of some type. Obviously, we don't want to turn away people who are obviously in need, but this is being used to the detriment of our own nation. And it's not just people who don't know what's going on and are just trying to be charitable and all that. Leo, what do you have in your book as far as following the money and the people, these different agencies, many of them being Christian or whatever, are actually, if I read correctly, getting paid for a certain amount per person, per refugee who's coming to America? What kind of research did you do on that?
That is a sad truth. A lot of people don't know that the process starts with the United Nations. The United Nations actually picks our refugees who are coming to the United States for us. If that gives you any idea, as to why so many are coming from these hostile countries. Once the UN picks the initial refugee population to come here in a given week or month or whatever, they turn it over to us and our Homeland Security Department to screen them further. And once they're screened by us, it sort of shifts to the State Department as far as actually relocating them here to the United States. And they come to about 350 cities or towns. This is not just a program where we see refugees coming into, major gateway cities like New York City, LA, Miami, Chicago, Philadelphia. No, we're talking cities as small as Rutland, Vermont, Owatonna, Minnesota, Owensboro, Kentucky, Twin Falls, Idaho, tiny little cities and even smaller towns. And once they get here, they are resettled, not by the government per se, but by one of 9 agencies. They're called volunteer agencies, or VOLOGs for short. And these 9 VOLOGs contract with the U.S. State Department to set the refugees up in one of these 350 or so cities and towns. They immediately sign them up for all sorts of welfare plans. They will try to find them a job. But these agencies do get paid for every refugee that they bring into our country. It's actually up to a little over $2,000 per refugee. About half of that goes to the refugee to set them up in one of these towns, but they get to keep the other half for their to cover their own agency's costs. So the more refugees they bring in, obviously, the more money flowing into their coffers, and the more they can expand their reach and expand their operation. And they, in turn, will also subcontract with churches and other groups, like 350 other groups subcontract with these 9 volags. And the 9 volags, it gets even worse, Tony. Not only are they paid for every refugee they come in, and then we wonder why they're always, every year, lobbying for more refugees, not less, but they also sign a contract with the State Department. A clause is included in the contract that they will not proselytize or evangelize these refugees. And that's important because 6 of the 9 volags are affiliated with religious institutions. The Catholic U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is the largest volag. Lutheran Social Services is another large one. Then you've got, Episcopal Immigration and Migration Ministries, I believe it is called. It's affiliated with the Episcopal Church. You have got the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, affiliated with Reform Judaism. You've got World Relief, which is a branch of the National Council of Evangelicals. So it's an evangelical organization. And so really almost every major denomination in the United States is one way or another in on this project of resettling refugees from the third world into these 350 or so cities and towns.
And one thing they're not able to give them is the gospel.
And these 9 agencies, primary agencies, agree not to share the gospel. That is 100% true, and they cannot deny it. I've seen it on the I've located the exact part of the contract, and it's footnoted in my book. They cannot deny that. And so you've got these 9 agencies actually working as fronts for the government, and in the process compromising their own religious commitment to the gospel, the Great Commission. So they will they think it's important to food, clothe, and shelter these refugees, but they don't think it's important to share the gospel with them. So that's a problem.
Obviously we are supposed to give those temporal needs, those physical needs to people who are in need of them. And preferably those are people who are legitimate refugees who truly are in need, who are not trying to use the system against itself and all of that. But especially to even make that agreement, okay, we're not going to share the gospel with them. And that's the purpose of their organization, technically. I mean, all they're doing is making this world a better place to go to hell from, because they're giving these people temporary needs. They're meeting those, but they're not giving them the true spiritual need that they have, and that is the truth. All of these Muslims who come here, they're obviously following the lie of Islam. They believe in a version of God known as Allah. They believe a certain thing, doing certain things will please him and get them into paradise, but it's all a lie. And I don't think these organizations, who are, of course, probably doing it for the money, and then also, they obviously do want to help at the same time, they probably don't know that they are playing in to the Islamic worldview and helping it out, because as Leo said earlier, their goal is to have this hijra and this migration. And the Islamic worldview is for the whole world to be under Sharia. Now, Jesus lived in the 1st century. Jesus died, he rose from the dead, and Christianity, the gospel, spread throughout that area. And Leo even has in his book here that around the 7th century, listen to this, friends, 95% of the Middle East was Christian at that time. But you have Muhammad that Muhammad was born in 570, 610. He received a supposed revelation from Jibril, from the angel Gabriel. He thought he was demon possessed. It was his wife Hadijah who said, "Oh no, you're favored by God," and talked him into believing that he was a prophet. So, but after Muhammad died in 632, we see the spread of Islam throughout the Middle East. And in the 7th century, being 95% Christian, Islam continued to spread. And Leo, today, what percentage of the Middle East is Christian?
It's very small, less than 5%, less than 3%. As recently as, 150 years ago, it was the Christian population of the Middle East was upwards of 20%. So you can see just in the last century and a half how many have been swept out of this land of their home, their native homeland. Assyrian Christians, Chaldean Christians, which we referred to before, Syrians, Greek Christians, Orthodox Christians, Catholics, Protestants. They've all had a very hard time of it since the rise of Islam.
Definitely. And friends, I mean, if you haven't studied history, that's the thing. The Muslim worldview is that the whole world, when you're born, you're a Muslim, that Islam was the original religion, that Judaism's a corruption of that Christianity is a corruption of that, and that Muhammad, supposedly, when he received the Quran, was bringing true, pure monotheism back to the world, trying to get the world back to the original religion. That is not the case. We see that Islam began with Muhammad himself. And of course, there's many contradictions in the Quran that don't line up with the Bible in any way. But we actually have a caller here. So, Leo, if you're okay, we're going to want to take a caller. We're not sure exactly what his question is. Caller, can you hear me? Okay, we don't have him right now.
Just recently we had the Armenian
let
genocide.
Our friends know again, his book is Stealth Invasion, and please pick it up because it's full of a ton of information about what is going on. If all you're doing is listening to the mainstream media about this whole refugee thing, you need to get alternative news sources, especially sources like Leo himself, who's done a lot of research in this area. Now, Leo, can you tell our audience what the difference is between the term integration and assimilation, and what you are seeing, for the most part, as far as these refugees that are coming in? We have a little problem with your audio there. Let's work on that. There we go. Okay, start over, please.
Okay. I just wanted to say, to finish the point about your last question, these 9 Volags who are controlling resettlement and making money off of it as the refugees flow into this country are often the very same sources you will see quoted in your local newspaper and TV whenever there's a controversy about refugees. But the media never points out that they have a financial stake in the continuation of refugee resettlement. So I just want to make that clear, that people need to find out who these 9 agencies are and not listen to a word that they say when they show up at their city council meeting, or and whenever we have pushback at the local level against refugees, the government will usually send a representative, one of these 9 Volags, to justify why those of us who are against it are, shouldn't be against it. But okay, back now to your question about the difference between assimilation and integration. That's a good question. We used to require assimilation of our immigrants in this country, and it is right there stated in the documents of the government immigration agencies that assimilation was the goal. Well, the word assimilation started disappearing from the immigration agencies of our government sometime around the 1970s, and was gradually replaced with the word integration. And people now on the left and the right, Christian, non-Christian, we all use that word integration. But we shouldn't. We should stick with assimilation, because there is a difference, and it's not all that subtle. When you speak of an immigrant assimilating, which is what your forefathers were required to do, and mine, the burden was on the immigrant. And it was stated to the immigrant on day one of his arrival here that the burden of assimilation was on him. And he needed to adopt the major values of our Constitution, which are ensconced in the Bill of Rights. First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of religion. Those are just the starting points. That's basic America 101 freedom. You needed to adopt those values. But when you talk about the more modern immigrants, they are told that they're to integrate, and that switches things around. Under integration, the burden is no longer on the immigrant to adopt the social mores and cultural values of the host country. The host country now has the burden to adopt the culture of the immigrant. And so, and not just the country, but the local community where the immigrant is placed. And so we have all these agencies now feeding off of government grants, like Welcoming America, David LaBelle's organization, based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and started out in Nashville, Tennessee, and is now nationwide with a lot of government grants, with George Soros foundational grants. They bring their people to these communities that are set to receive refugees, and they start what they call softening the soil. And what they are is they're a propaganda machine for the left. And they come and tell a bunch of lies to the local community about how great the refugees are going to be for their community. They're going to add to the economy. They're going to boost the economy. They're going to add to diversity and inclusiveness and all these wonderful sounding buzzwords that you find in the documents of the United Nations and the globalist mentality.
Okay.
And so, it'd be one thing if we were taking all these refugees. There could be a, argument made that we should. But it's worse when you take them and then you don't require them to become true Americans and adopt American values. You tell them that their culture is just as good as ours and that the burden is on us to give respect to their culture when they're here. That's sending the wrong message. And as a result, we've seen a lot of problems that are just starting to show their face here in America. Problems like honor violence, female genital mutilation, just horrific things that were never present in this country are starting to show up, and we've had documented cases of them. Okay.
Leo, we have about 10 minutes left in the show, and there's 3 things that I still want to cover. I'm going to go ahead and just list them real quick so then we can be on the same page. But I told you about a video that I created, a presentation that I created on the Muslim Brotherhood. And I want to ask you, number 1, what role is the Muslim Brotherhood playing in this? Number 2, if we stay on the same path that we're currently on, what do you foresee in the future as the future of America? And then, of course, 3rd, I definitely want to get to your opinion on the solution to all of this that is going on right now. So first, Muslim Brotherhood, what do you see? What have you researched about them and their role in what's going on?
They are very deeply embedded in this country and have been since the late 60s, early 70s. The Muslim Brotherhood, as you probably know, was founded in Egypt in 1928 and started out as a mostly nationalistic type organization wanting to remove the influence of the British colonization of Egypt and bring the country to a more religious Islamic-based society. So think of it in those terms now, only not just Egypt, but in the 70s it started becoming more international in scope. And its own stated goal is to spread Sharia law around the world. And so they've been very much active here in our country since that time. And they created a document in the late 1980s. It was published in 1991 called the Explanatory Memorandum, giving a strategy for the brothers in North America. And in this document, which was seized by the FBI in 2004 and presented at trial in a courtroom here in the United States, Dallas, Texas area. So this is not me making this up. This is in their own documents presented by the FBI as evidence in this trial. It was called the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was the biggest terror financing trial ever conducted on U.S. soil. It was very successful. When President Obama came into office in 2008, he and Eric Holder shut that trial down. But this document really lays out the plan of the Muslim Brotherhood in America, and it talks about establishing settlements for Islam here in America, and it also talked about partnering with various sympathetic non-Muslim groups to get their agenda have more and more credibility here in America. And the way they would do that is they would partner with left-wing organizations, and we see that so often done now today, as we see this, what I call unholy alliance, really bearing fruit between the Islamic extremists and the left-wing American extremists. And they said that between the hand of the believer and the unbeliever, they would engage in this sort of grand jihad to bring down our miserable house of Western civilization and establish Islam as the only religion here in the United States. So, as you said earlier, Islam, not all Muslims, but Islam, in terms of mainstream Islam, Muslim Brotherhood organizations, they are very supremacist in their outlook on the world, in their worldview. They eventually see Islam being the only religion in America. So, this religion of peace that we hear about, and the call to prayer is just the sweetest sound that President Obama said he ever can recall hearing. Well, we know people in Muslim countries who, when they hear that call, they hear dominance. A Christian in Egypt is very much a second-class citizen. A Christian in Pakistan is very much a second-class citizen. They're not allowed to build churches without specific permission from the government. They're not even allowed to maintain their churches without a specific permission. They cannot ring their church bells. They cannot display Christian symbols in public. They are what we call dhimmis, living under dhimmitude, second-class citizens. And then you get to countries like Saudi Arabia that is, 100% Muslim. They don't even allow Christians, period. They don't allow Bibles into the country under punishment of death. There's not a single church in Saudi Arabia. So we see what the end game is. And all of the main terrorists that we've heard about in this country, Osama bin Laden, Anwar al-Awlaki, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the current head of Al-Qaeda, the blind sheik, every single one of these big-time terrorists started out, before they joined Al-Qaeda, they were members of the Muslim Brotherhood. So this really is the head of the snake in the world today in terms of the global Islamic movement. We don't hear a lot about it, but we have to recognize it for what it is. And I'm hoping President Trump will take it upon himself to declare the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. There's a bill in Congress that would do the same thing. We can't get Congress to move on it. Isn't that interesting? Russia, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and several other countries have all declared the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. But in America, we can't seem to get that done. So I think that's one of the things on President Trump's agenda that I hope he will accomplish.
Okay. And can you take a couple minutes to go through your list of multi-step solution to this? I mean, obviously, we want to make Trump aware of the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm sure he probably is aware of it to some degree already. But other than him, maybe doing something about it or proclaiming that it is designated a terrorist organization, what other steps would you suggest to our audience that perhaps even they could be involved in?
Yeah, I think that Terrorist Designation Act sitting in Congress is number one. If we can do that, that would also ban groups, 2 or 3 other groups affiliated with the Brotherhood. CARE, It's a very dangerous organization, Council on American Islamic Relations. They are engaged in all sorts of anti-American work, lawsuits, intimidation of employers and public universities, you name it. ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, is also part of the Brotherhood and would be banned. And so this is step number one, most important. But other thing is we need to not perhaps, be so much anti-Muslim. That is not really going to get us anywhere. But we should be unapologetically anti-Sharia law. There are Muslims in this country who don't want any part of Sharia law. They want to just sort of, live their lives and work their job and raise their families. If we ever were to become a Muslim-dominant country, they would be killed as well as us. So, pity the Muslim. Don't hate the Muslim. That's another piece of advice I would have. Be open with them, converse with them, don't fear them, but do share the gospel with them. Yeah. And the other thing is assimilation. We need to contact our congressmen and at that level try to get some things in place that would not allow any more that would implement more extreme vetting, that we could find out what exactly the people coming here believe. Because if it's one type of Muslim, that's one thing, and if it's the other type, that's quite another. But we don't have anything in place right now to distinguish between the two.
Right. Okay. Well, friends, we want to thank you for being with us. And Leo, thank you so much for being on the show. And I hope that your book becomes a bestseller very quickly, because we definitely want to get this information into people's hands. But friends, just as Leo had said, don't hate Muslims. If you're concerned about anything or hate anything, have it be the lie of Islam. Muslims throughout the world are victims. They're victims of a lie that will ultimately result in ending up in hell, because God is good and just, and he must punish lawbreakers, and that's all of us. None of us are perfect. Only Jesus was perfect. He never broke the law, never sinned. He lived a sinless life, died on the cross, rose from the dead 3 days later, and it's only in him where we can actually receive salvation and true reconciliation to God. So we want to love our Muslim neighbors. We want to share the gospel with them as well. So here's a few-step plan. Number one, get educated. That includes sharing this video with all of your friends, neighbors, coworkers, etc. Now, I want you to take a combo of videos here, okay? If you go to my Vimeo channel, where this show is going to end up as well as ABN Trinity channel's YouTube channel as well, I want you to watch 3 videos. I want you to watch my video on the Muslim Brotherhood, Origin, Identity, and Agenda. You can find that on my Vimeo channel right now, vimeo.com/Tony Goulet. And then watch the Islamization of the United Kingdom to see what America could become if we follow in their footsteps. And I have Tommy Robinson as a guest on that show. And then take this show, Self-Invasion, Immigration and Resettlement Jihad with Leo Hohmann. Get these 3 videos, watch them, share them everywhere with everyone who you can. At the same time, love your Muslim neighbor and look for opportunities to share the gospel with them, because the gospel is the power of God unto salvation, and a new worldview, a renewed mind from the power of the Holy Spirit through repentance and faith in Christ is what will truly change the worldview of Muslims, and that will make the world a better place as long as we're here. But again, most importantly, we need to worry about people's spiritual health and their spiritual need, which is the gospel itself. So thank you for being with us. Again, please share this video with everyone who you can. And we will see you next Monday back here on ABN's Trinity channel for another episode of Colliding Worldviews. We'll see you next time.